You gonna call the cops on us, old man? Walter Bren stood in the doorway of his barn at 5:47 in the morning, his shotgun trembling in his weathered hands. Six leather-clad strangers sprawled across his hay bales like they owned the place. The biggest one sat up slowly, chains clinking against his jacket. Walter's heart hammered against his ribs. His farm was falling apart. His bank account was empty. And now this. He should have been terrified. He should have pulled that trigger, or at least reached for the phone. Instead, he did something that shocked even himself. He lowered the gun and said 5 words that would change everything. You boys hungry or what? Before we dive into what happened next, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell because you won't believe where this story goes. And drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from so I can see how far Walter's story travels. Trust me, you need to stick around until the end of this one. Walter didn't wait for an answer. He turned his back on 6 Hells Angels and walked straight to his farmhouse kitchen, shotgun still in hand. His knees ached with every step across the frost-covered ground. 90 years old, and he was either the bravest fool in Nebraska or the craziest. Maybe both. Inside, he propped the gun against the kitchen counter and stared at his reflection in the window above the sink. When had he gotten so old? When had the lines around his eyes carved so deep? Martha would have known what to do. Martha always knew. But Martha had been gone 3 years now, and the farm had been dying with her memory ever since. His hands shook as he pulled eggs from the refrigerator. 18 eggs. That's what he had. He cracked them one by one into his largest cast iron skillet, the same one Martha had used for 40 years. The bacon came next, thick strips that sizzled and popped when they hit the hot grease. "What the hell are you doing, Walter?" he muttered to himself. But he kept cooking. His daughter Linda's voice echoed in his head from last week's phone call. "Dad, you can't keep living out there alone. The place is falling apart. You're falling apart. Just sell it and move in with us." Pride. That's what kept him here. Stubborn, foolish pride. The biscuits went into the oven. He'd made these same biscuits every Sunday morning for 63 years. His hands knew the recipe better than his mind did. Through the kitchen window, he could see the barn. No movement yet. Maybe they'd already left. Maybe he'd imagined the whole thing. At 90, the mind played tricks sometimes. But then the barn door swung open. They came out one by one. 6 massive men in black leather chains and boots that could crush a man's skull. The early morning sun caught the silver studs on their jackets. Hell's Angels patches glared back at him like warnings. Walter's chest tightened. His pills were upstairs. Of course they were upstairs. The biggest one led the pack. Had to be 6'5", maybe 270. Beard down to his chest arms, covered in tattoos that probably told stories Walter didn't want to know. Behind him came a younger guy, maybe 40, with a scar running from his eye to his jaw. Then 4 others, each looking like they could tear this farmhouse apart with their bare hands. They stopped at the edge of his property, talking among themselves, pointing at the house, pointing at the barn. One of them laughed, but it wasn't a friendly sound. Walter's hand moved toward the shotgun, then stopped. He'd already made his choice, hadn't he? When he turned his back on them in that barn, when he cracked those eggs, instead of calling Sheriff Morrison, he'd made his choice. The biscuits were almost done. The bacon sat crisp and perfect on a paper towel. The eggs needed another minute. A knock at the door nearly stopped his heart. 3 solid pounds that rattled the frame. Walter wiped his hands on his apron. Martha's old apron with the faded flowers, and walked to the door. Each step felt like walking to his own execution. He opened it. The big one stood there, his massive frame blocking out the morning sun. Up close, Walter could see the man's eyes were a startling blue, clear and sharp, despite the hard life written across his face. "Sir," the man said, just that one word. His voice was surprisingly soft. "Food's getting cold," Walter replied. "You coming in or not?" Something flickered across the biker's face. Surprise, maybe, or confusion. He turned back to the others and jerked his head toward the house. They filed in silently, these giants of men in their leather and chains, stepping carefully across Martha's clean floors like they were afraid to leave tracks. Walter wanted to laugh. These men probably left tracks everywhere they went, tracks the law followed, tracks that meant trouble. "Wash your hands," Walter said, pointing to the kitchen sink, "and take your boots off, house rules." For a moment, nobody moved. Then the big one bent down and started unlacing his boots. The others followed. 6 pairs of heavy motorcycle boots lined up by the door like obedient soldiers. 6 grown men washing their hands in Walter's kitchen sink, trading places without a word. Walter set the food on the table. 18 eggs, 2 pounds of bacon, 12 biscuits, and a pot of coffee strong enough to wake the dead. He'd pulled out every plate and mug he owned. "Sit," he said. They sat. Walter took his usual spot at the head of the table, Martha's empty chair, a ghost at his right hand. The bikers filled the other seats, their tattooed arms and scarred hands looking wrong against Martha's flowered tablecloth. Nobody spoke. Nobody reached for the food. They all looked at him, waiting. "Well," Walter said, "you gonna eat or just stare at it?" The big one reached forward, slowly like he was expecting a trap. He took 2 biscuits, 3 eggs, 4 strips of bacon. The others followed his lead, filling their plates with a kind of hunger that spoke of missed meals and long roads. Walter watched them eat. They didn't bolt the food down like animals. They ate slowly, deliberately, like they were savoring something they had forgotten existed. The younger one, with the scar, closed his eyes with the first bite of biscuit, and Walter could have sworn he saw the man's jaw tremble. "Name's Duke," the big one said, finally wiping his mouth with a napkin. "That's Razor Tank Smoke Preacher, and the kid there is Ghost." Walter nodded. "Walter Bren, this is my farm, or what's left of it." "We know," Duke said. "Saw your mailbox. We didn't mean to crash in your barn, sir. We were riding through storm, hit hard around midnight. Saw your barn door was open. We figured nobody would notice," Walter finished. Duke's jaw tightened, but he nodded. "You figured right," Walter said. "Nobody comes out here anymore. Not my neighbors, not my daughter, not even the Jehovah's Witnesses. Place has been going to hell for 3 years. He poured himself more coffee. "Since Martha died." The silence that followed was heavy. The one called Preacher set down his fork. "I'm sorry for your loss, sir," Preacher said. His voice carried the weight of someone who understood loss intimately. Walter shrugged. "Life moves on. Farm doesn't care if you're grieving. Crops still need planting. Fences still need mending. Roof still needs fixing. Problem is, I'm 90 years old and I can't do a damn thing about any of it anymore." "Why don't you sell?" Razor asked. "Because it's mine," Walter snapped. Then softer, "Because it's all I have left of her. 63 years we worked this land together. You don't just walk away from that." Ghost, the youngest, once spoke up for the first time. "My grandpa was the same way. Worked his ranch until the day he died. 94 years old, still trying to fix fences. Found him out in the south pasture, hammer still in his hand." "Good way to go," Walter said. "Better than a hospital bed," Ghost agreed. They finished eating in silence. When the plates were empty, Duke stood and started clearing the table. "Leave it," Walter said. "No, sir," Duke replied. "Mama raised me better than that." One by one they cleaned up. Dishes washed, dried, and put away. Counters wiped down. Coffee pot rinsed and set in the rack. The kitchen looked cleaner than it had in months. Duke was the last to leave the kitchen. He stopped in the doorway, his massive frame filling it completely. "Thank you, sir," he said, "for not calling the cops, for the food, for treating us like people." "You are people," Walter said. "Scary-looking people, but people." Something like a smile crossed Duke's face. "That we are." They pulled on their boots and filed out. Walter stood at the window watching them walk back to the barn. Their red motorcycles roared to life, one by one, a thunder that shook the windows. They pulled out onto the road and disappeared toward the highway. Walter stood there long after the sound faded, staring at his empty farm. The fence was falling down. The barn roof had holes big enough to see sky through. The tractor hadn't run in 2 years. The fields were overrun with weeds. Everything Martha had loved, everything they'd built together, was dying. He should have called Linda, should have taken her up on her offer, but the thought of leaving this place, of watching strangers tear down the house where he'd raised his daughter, where he'd loved his wife, where he'd lived his entire adult life, it was too much. The day passed slowly. Walter tried to work, but everything hurt. His back, his knees, his hands, even his pride hurt. At sunset, he sat on the porch with a glass of whiskey, doctor's orders, be damned, and watched the sky turn orange and purple. Martha had loved sunsets. They'd sat on this porch together thousands of times, watching the sun go down over their land, planning tomorrow, remembering yesterday. "I'm losing it, Martha." he whispered to the empty air. I'm losing everything we built. The wind picked up cold and sharp. Winter was coming. He'd never make it through another winter alone. 3 days passed. Walter fell into his routine. Wake up at dawn, make coffee, stare at the list of things that needed fixing, do nothing about it, go to bed. Repeat. On the fourth day, he heard motorcycles. His heart jumped. He told himself it was fear, but it wasn't. It was something else. Something he didn't want to name. He walked outside. 6 motorcycles pulled into his driveway. The same 6 from before. Duke in the lead. They killed the engines. The silence that followed was louder than the bikes had been. Duke climbed off his motorcycle and pulled something from his saddlebag. A toolbox. Old, battered, but full. What are you doing? Walter called out. Duke walked toward him, the other 5 following. Noticed your fence is falling down. So we're gonna fix it. Walter's chest tightened. I didn't ask you to do that. No, sir, you didn't. Duke set the toolbox down. But you fed us, treated us with respect when you could have called the law. That means something. I don't need charity, chum, Walter said, but his voice cracked on the last word. It ain't charity, Razor said, stepping forward. It's payment for the best damn breakfast I've had in 10 years. Tank nodded, and we got nothing better to do today. They didn't wait for permission. They walked straight to the fence line and got to work. Walter stood on his porch frozen, watching these 6 massive bikers tear down his old fence posts and sink new ones. They worked like a machine. Duke and Tank handled the post hole digger. Razor and Smoke cut new boards. Preacher and Ghost nailed everything together. No wasted movement, no arguing. They'd done this before. Walter's neighbor, Joe Patterson, drove by in his pickup. He slowed down, staring. Then he sped up and kept going. By noon, Walter's phone rang. Dad, what the hell is going on? Linda's voice was sharp with worry. Joe Patterson just called me. He says there are bikers at your house. They're fixing my fence, Walter said. They're what? You heard me. They're fixing my fence. Dad, those are Hell's Angels. Joe saw the patches on their jackets. I know who they are. And you're just letting them work on your property. Dad, they're criminals. They're human beings, Walter snapped, which is more than I can say for Joe Patterson or anyone else around here. Joe hasn't stopped by in 3 years, Linda. 3 years. But these men show up and suddenly everyone cares what's happening on my farm. Dad, they're fixing my fence, Linda, for free because I made them breakfast. That's it. That's the whole story. I'm calling the sheriff. You do that and you'll never hear from me again. The words came out harder than he intended, but he meant them. Linda was quiet for a long moment. Dad, I'm worried about you. I know, but I'm fine. They're fine. Everything's fine. He hung up before she could argue. By late afternoon, the fence was done. 100 yards of straight, strong fencing that would last another 20 years. The bikers packed up their tools and headed for their bikes. Walter met them at the driveway. You didn't have to do that. Yes, sir, we did, Duke said. Question is, what else needs fixing? Walter looked at his barn, at his house, at the fields, at everything. Everything, he whispered. Everything needs fixing. Duke followed his gaze. We'll be back tomorrow. Why? The word burst out of Walter before he could stop it. Why are you doing this? Duke was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was different, softer, older. Because somebody did it for me once, long time ago, when I had nothing and nobody. Some old man gave me a chance when everyone else wanted to lock me up and throw away the key. I never got to pay him back. He died before I could. Duke met Walter's eyes. But I can pay it forward. They rode off into the sunset, 6 dark figures on roaring machines, leaving behind a fence that stood straight and true for the first time in years. Walter stood in his driveway until the sound faded completely. Then he walked to the fence and ran his hand along the new wood. Solid, strong, built to last. That night he slept better than he had in 3 years. They came back the next day. And the day after that, and the day after that. The fence became a roof. The roof became a new barn door. The barn door became a dozen other small repairs that Walter had given up on. Every morning they showed up, every evening they left, and every day Walter made them lunch. He started looking forward to it, started planning meals, started talking to them while they worked. Duke had served in Vietnam. Razor had been a carpenter before prison. Tank had 3 kids he hadn't seen in 12 years. Smoke wrote poetry. Preacher really had been a preacher once. Ghost was running from something, but he wouldn't say what. They were broken men fixing a broken farm, and somehow piece by piece they were all getting fixed together. But the town was starting to notice. Sheriff Morrison showed up on day 7. Walter was making sandwiches when the patrol car pulled up. Walter, Morrison said, stepping out, "We need to talk." "Then talk, Bill." Morrison glanced at the bikers working on the barn roof. "People are concerned. People are nosy. These are Hell's Angels, Walter. Do you know what that means?" "It means they're fixing my barn." Walter handed Morrison a sandwich. "You want one?" Morrison didn't take it. "I've been getting calls all week. Your neighbors are worried. Your daughter's worried. Hell, I'm worried. About what? That my farm might actually get fixed. About what they want from you." Morrison lowered his voice. "Men like that don't do nothing for free, Walter. There's always an angle." Walter looked at the sheriff. Bill Morrison had been sheriff for 20 years. Good man, mostly. But he didn't understand. How could he? He had a wife, kids, grandkids, people who visited, who called, who cared. Bill Morrison had never spent 3 years alone watching everything he loved fall apart. "The only angle here, Bill, is that 6 men are treating me with more respect and kindness than anyone in this town has shown me since Martha died." Morrison flinched. "That's not fair." "Isn't it? When's the last time you stopped by Bill, not on official business? Just to check in, see how I was doing?" The sheriff had no answer for that. "That's what I thought," Walter said. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got lunch to finish." Morrison left without another word, but Walter knew it wouldn't be the last visit. The town was watching now, and when the town watched, the town judged. That night, Walter's phone rang again, Linda crying. "Dad, please, just come stay with us for a few weeks until this blows over." "Until what blows over?" "Everyone's talking. They're saying those bikers are using you, that they're going to rob you or hurt you or—" "Linda," Walter's voice was firm, "I'm 90 years old. I got maybe 2, 3 years left if I'm lucky. You know what I got in my bank account? $47. You know what I got worth stealing? Nothing. This farm is mortgaged to the hilt. The house is falling apart. The only thing those men could possibly want from me is the one thing nobody else wants anymore, my company. Dad, I made them breakfast, Jaren. That's all. And they're paying me back the only way they know how, by working, by fixing things, by treating me like I'm worth something. When's the last time anyone made me feel worth something?" His daughter sobbed on the other end of the line. "I'm sorry, Daddy. I'm so sorry." "I know, honey. I know." Walter's voice softened. "But I'm okay. Better than okay. For the first time in 3 years, I'm actually okay." They talked for another hour. By the end, Linda wasn't crying anymore. She wasn't happy about the situation, but she understood. Sort of. The work continued. Day 10, they fixed the porch steps. Day 12, they replaced his water heater. Day 15, they repainted his barn. And every day, Walter cooked for them. Not just lunch, but real meals. Pot roast, fried chicken, meatloaf, Martha's recipes, the ones he hadn't made in years because cooking for one person seemed pointless. He started to learn their stories, really learn them. Duke had lost his wife to cancer. Razor's daughter wouldn't speak to him. Tank's kids thought he was dead. Smoke had buried his best friend last year. Preacher couldn't go back to church because he didn't believe anymore. Ghost was running from the man who killed his brother. They were broken men, all of them. Just like Walter. Just like his farm. But somehow working together, they were becoming whole again. On day 16, everything changed. Walter woke up to voices outside, angry voices. He looked out his window and saw a crowd gathered at the end of his driveway. 20 people, maybe more. His neighbors. People from town. Joe Patterson stood at the front, arms crossed, face red with anger. The bikers were already there, standing between the crowd and Walter's house like a wall of leather and steel. Walter grabbed his coat and hurried outside as fast as his old legs would carry him. "Criminals," Patterson was shouting. "You're criminals, and everyone knows it." "We're working," Duke replied calmly. "That's all." "On what? What are you really doing out here? What do you want from him?" That's none of your damn business, Joe. Walter pushed through the crowd. Walter, these men are dangerous, Patterson said. They're Hell's Angels. Do you know what that means? You know what? It means they've done more for me in 2 weeks than you've done in 3 years, Walter shouted. His heart was pounding. His hands were shaking, but he didn't care. Where were all of you when my fence fell down, when my roof started leaking, when I couldn't afford to fix anything? Where were you? The crowd shifted uncomfortably. A few people looked away. That's what I thought, Walter continued. You want to know what these men want from me? Nothing. They want nothing. They're fixing my farm because I treated them like human beings. That's it. That's the whole story. And if that makes me a fool in your eyes, then so be it. Walter, someone started. Get off my property, Walter said quietly. All of you, right now. They left slowly, reluctantly, shooting dirty looks at the bikers as they went. Patterson lingered longest, shaking his head like Walter had betrayed him somehow. When they were gone, Walter turned to Duke. The big man's jaw was tight, his hands clenched into fists. I'm sorry about that, Walter said. Don't be. Duke's voice was hard. We're used to it. You shouldn't have to be. Ghost spoke up, his young voice bitter. Story of our lives, old man. People see the patches and they see monsters. They don't see that preacher volunteers at soup kitchens. They don't see that Tank sends money to his ex-wife every month for his kids. They don't see that Razor's been sober for 8 years. They just see the leather and the ink and they make up their minds. Then they're fools, Walter said firmly, all of them. They stood there in silence, these 7 broken men on a broken farm united against a world that didn't want to understand them. We should probably go, Duke said finally. Don't want to cause you more trouble. Like hell you will, Walter replied. That barn roof still needs another day's work, and I'm making pot roast for lunch, Martha's recipe. You're staying. Duke looked at him for a long moment. Then he smiled. Not a big smile, but genuine. Yes, sir, he said. They went back to work. Walter went back to his kitchen, and the farm kept getting fixed, one board, one nail, one meal at a time. But something had shifted. The town was actively hostile now. When Walter drove into town for groceries that afternoon, people stared. Some turned away. The cashier at the market barely spoke to him. He didn't care. Or he told himself he didn't. That night alone in his house, he cared. He sat in Martha's chair and cried like he hadn't cried since her funeral. Not because of what the town thought, but because he finally understood what loneliness really meant. It wasn't being alone. It was being surrounded by people who didn't see you anymore. The bikers saw him. 6 strangers with violent pasts and uncertain futures saw him more clearly than people he'd known for 50 years. Tomorrow they'd finish the barn roof. Tomorrow he'd make Martha's pot roast. Tomorrow the town would judge him and he'd ignore them. Tomorrow he'd keep living because that's what Martha would want. Because that's what his new friends needed him to do. Because giving up now after everything would dishonor the work they'd done together. Walter Bren was 90 years old, and for the first time in 3 years, he had a reason to wake up in the morning. That reason was 6 Hell's Angels, who treated him with more dignity than anyone else in his life. And he'd be damned if he'd let the town take that away from him. The pot roast was in the oven when Walter heard the first rock hit his window. He was peeling potatoes at the sink, hands moving on muscle memory when the glass cracked. Not shattered, just cracked. A spider web of lines spreading from a single point. Walter stared at it for 3 full seconds before his brain caught up with what had happened. Someone had thrown a rock at his house. He walked to the front door and opened it. His driveway was empty, but he could see fresh tire tracks in the dirt. Truck tires. Big ones. Duke appeared from around the barn, moving fast despite his size. You okay? Fine, Walter said, but his hands were shaking again. Just some coward with the rock and too much free time. This is because of us. Duke's voice was flat. This is because people are idiots. Walter went back inside. Pot roast will be ready in an hour. Duke followed him in. Mr. Bren, Walter? Walter. Duke stopped in the kitchen doorway. We're making things worse for you. You're making my farm better. That's all that matters. Walter went back to his potatoes, peeling faster, now angry. I'm 90 years old, Duke. You know what that means? It means I don't have time to care what people think anymore. It means I'm done being polite to people who don't deserve it. It means I'm going to eat pot roast with my friends, and anyone who doesn't like it can go straight to hell. The word hung in the air. Friends. Walter hadn't meant to say it. It just came out. Duke was quiet for a long moment. Your daughter called me this morning. Walter's hand stopped moving. What? Found my number somehow, probably through the sheriff. She wanted to know what we really wanted from you. Duke leaned against the doorframe. I told her the truth, that you fed us when you didn't have to, that you treated us like people when nobody else would, that we're paying you back the only way we know how. What did she say? She asked if we were using you, if we were planning to rob you or hurt you or con you somehow. Duke's jaw tightened. I told her that if we wanted to rob you, we'd have done it that first morning. We'd have taken whatever you had and been gone before you woke up. But we didn't, because that's not who we are anymore. Anymore, Walter repeated softly. Yeah, anymore. Duke met his eyes. We've all done things, Walter, bad things, things we can't take back, but we're trying to be better. That's all any of us can do. Try to be better than we were yesterday. Walter nodded. He understood that. God, did he understand that? How many times had he snapped at Martha over nothing? How many times had he been too proud to ask for help when he needed it? How many times had he put the farm before his family? My wife used to say that people aren't defined by their worst day, Walter said. They're defined by what they do after it. Smart woman. The smartest. Walter went back to his potatoes. Now get back to work. That barn roof isn't going to finish itself. Duke left, but Walter could hear him talking to the others outside. Their voices were low, serious. Planning something. Walter knew that tone. He'd used it himself plenty of times when he and Martha were figuring out how to save the farm during the bad years. The pot roast cooked, the potatoes boiled. Walter made gravy from scratch the way Martha had taught him. His hands knew the motions so well he didn't have to think about it. Flour, butter, beef drippings, milk. Stir until thick. Season until it tastes right. Lunch was ready at noon. The bikers came in boots, off hands washed, sitting in their usual spots. But something was different today. They were quieter, more tense. Spit it out, Walter said, serving the pot roast. Tank spoke first. We think we should leave after today. Walter's hand stopped halfway to his plate. Why Basum? Because we're causing you problems, Razor said. That rock through your window. That's just the start. Next, it'll be something worse. Or someone might call the cops and make up some story about us threatening you, Smoke added. Happened before. Last town we helped out and the police showed up with a warrant. Said we'd been extorting an old lady. Took 3 months to get the charges dropped. We don't want that to happen to you, Kong, Preacher said quietly. You've been good to us, better than we deserve. We don't want to repay that by bringing trouble to your door. Ghost was staring at his plate, not eating. It's what we do. We ruin things, even when we're trying to help. Walter looked at each of them in turn. 6 grown men hardened by life and violence and loss sitting at his table like guilty children. It broke his heart. You listen to me, Walter said, his voice harder than he'd intended. All of you. I'm an old man and I don't have much time left. Maybe a year, maybe 2, if I'm lucky. And I'll be damned if I spend that time alone in this house, scared of what the neighbors think, scared of living in my own life. You want to leave, fine. That's your choice. But don't leave because of them. Don't give them that power. It's not about power, Duke said. It's about keeping you safe. I don't need to be safe. Walter slammed his hand on the table. The plates jumped. I need to be alive, and for the first time in 3 years, I actually feel alive again. Because of you. Because you showed up and reminded me that there's still good in this world. That people still care. That I still matter. The silence that followed was suffocating. Walter could hear his own heartbeat in his ears. I'm sorry, he said, quieter now. I didn't mean to yell, but you need to understand something. Martha and I, we worked this farm for 63 years. We survived droughts, floods, recessions, all of it. And you know what finally beat me? Loneliness. Not the weather, not the bank, not old age, loneliness. And then you showed up and suddenly I wasn't lonely anymore. So if you want to leave, leave. But don't do it for me, because losing you now would hurt a hell of a lot more than any rock through any window. Ghost looked up, his eyes wet. You really mean that? Every word. Duke cleared his throat. Then we stay. The others nodded one by one. Tank wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. Razor actually smiled. They ate in silence, but it was a different kind of silence now. Comfortable, like family. After lunch, while Walter was washing dishes, his phone rang. He almost didn't answer it, but something made him pick up. Mr. Bren, a woman's voice unfamiliar. This is Cheryl Winters from First National Bank. Walter's stomach dropped. He was 3 months behind on his mortgage. He'd been dodging their calls for weeks. I know I'm late, he started. I'm working on it. I just need a little more time. Mr. Bren, I'm not calling about that. Her voice was strange, careful. I'm calling because we received a payment on your account this morning. Walter frowned. A payment from who? It was anonymous. A cashier's check for the full amount of your outstanding balance. The room tilted. Walter grabbed the counter to steady himself. How much? $47,612. Your mortgage is paid in full. Walter couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't process what he was hearing. Mr. Bren, are you there? Who? His voice came out as a whisper. Who paid it? I told you it was anonymous. The check came with a note that just said, for Walter Bren Farm Mortgage. No name, no return address, nothing. Walter's eyes went to the window. Duke and Tank were on the barn roof hammering shingles. Razor and Smoke were reinforcing the fence line. Preacher and Ghost were fixing the gate. When, Walter asked, when did you receive it? This morning, around 9, before they had arrived, before lunch, before any of this. Mr. Bren, this is highly unusual, but everything checks out. The money is legitimate. Your farm is yours free and clear. Walter hung up without saying goodbye. He walked outside on legs that barely worked. Duke saw him coming and climbed down from the roof. Walter, you look like you've seen a ghost. Did you... Walter's voice broke. He tried again. Did you pay off my mortgage? Duke's face went carefully blank. What? The bank just called. Someone paid off my mortgage, all of it. $47,000, anonymous cashier's check. Walter's hands were shaking. Was it you? No, sir. Don't lie to me, Duke. I'm not lying. Duke's voice was steady. It wasn't me, May, and it wasn't in any of us. We don't have that kind of money. Then who? Duke shrugged, but something in his eyes told Walter he knew more than he was saying. Maybe you got a guardian angel. Duke, leave it alone, Walter. Duke's voice was firm now. Someone did something good for you, eh? Does it matter who? Yes, it matters. I need to thank them. Maybe they don't want to be thanked. Maybe they just wanted to help. Walter stared at him. Duke held his gaze unflinching. It was you, Walter said. I don't know how, but it was you. It wasn't me, Duke repeated. Now are you going to stand here arguing, or are you going to let us finish your roof? He climbed back up the ladder before Walter could respond. Walter stood there mind racing. $47,000. Where would bikers get that kind of money? Unless they weren't what everyone thought they were. He went back inside and did something he'd been avoiding for weeks. He got on his computer, the one Linda had bought him last Christmas, and searched for Hell's Angels. What he found wasn't what he expected. Yes, there were stories about violence and drugs and crime, but there were other stories too. Stories about charity rides for veterans, fundraisers for children's hospitals, toy drives for Christmas, Hell's Angels chapters organizing relief efforts after natural disasters. The truth was more complicated than he'd thought. They weren't all criminals, some were. Some had been, but some were just men who'd found brotherhood and purpose in the club. Men who were trying to be better than their pasts. Men like Duke and his crew. Walter dug deeper. He found Duke's real name, Duke Morrison. Former Army Ranger, 2 tours in Vietnam, came home to find his wife dying of cancer. Lost everything. Did 5 years in prison for beating a man who tried to rob his wife's gravesite. Got out, joined the Hells Angels, found a family. Razor real name, Michael Sharp. Master carpenter before alcohol destroyed his life. Sober 8 years. Teaches woodworking to at-risk youth through a church program. Tank real name, David Chen. 3 kids, ex-wife with full custody. Sends them money every month even though they think he's dead. Works construction between rides. The others were harder to find, but the pattern was the same. Broken men trying to put their lives back together. Walter closed the computer and sat back. He'd been wrong about them. Or rather, he'd been right about them in a way the town would never understand. They were criminals. but they were also good men. That night, after the bikers left, Walter sat on his porch with his whiskey and looked at his farm. The fence stood straight, the barn roof was nearly done, the gate swung smooth on new hinges. His farm was being saved. Not by his neighbors, not by his daughter, but by 6 strangers who owed him nothing but gave him everything. He cried. Not sad tears this time, grateful tears. The next morning brought trouble. Walter woke to the sound of sirens. Sheriff Morrison's patrol car pulled up, followed by 2 state police vehicles. Duke and the others were already there working on the last section of roof. They stopped when they saw the police. Walter hurried outside, his heart pounding. "Bill, what's this about?" he called out. Morrison got out of his car slowly. His face was grim. "Got a call last night, Walter. Anonymous tip that these men were running a drug operation out of your barn." "That's ridiculous." "Maybe so, but I got to investigate." Morrison looked at Duke. "You boys mind if we search the barn?" "We mind," Dookie said. "But we know how this works. You got a warrant." Morrison pulled out a folded paper. "Just came through this morning." Walter's stomach dropped. This was it. This was what the others had warned about. Someone had made up a story, and now these men were going to pay for helping him. "There's nothing in that barn but hay and old equipment," Walter said. "Then you won't mind if we look." Morrison gestured to the state police. They headed for the barn. Duke and his crew climbed down from the roof. They stood in a line, hands visible, non-threatening. But Walter could see the tension in their shoulders. They'd been through this before. They knew how it could go wrong. The search took 20 minutes. Walter stood on his porch watching, praying. "Please don't let them plant something. Please don't let this be a setup." Morrison emerged from the barn empty-handed. He looked disappointed, or maybe relieved. Walter couldn't tell. "Nothing," Morrison said. "Barn's clean." "I told you," Walter said. "False alarm then." But Morrison didn't look convinced. He walked over to Duke. "You boys got lucky today." "Wasn't luck," Duke said quietly. "It was the truth." "Maybe, but you should move on anyway. You've worn out your welcome here." "That's not your call to make, Bill," Walter said. "This is my property. They are my guests, and they're staying as long as I want them to stay." Morrison's jaw tightened. "Walter, I'm trying to help you." "No, you're trying to make the town happy. There's a difference. The town is worried. The town can worry about itself." Walter's voice rose. "I'm 90 years old and this farm is mine, and I'll have whoever I damn well please on my property." The state police were watching now. One of them, a young guy with a crew cut, spoke up. "Sir, maybe you should leave," Walter interrupted. "All of you, you did your search. You found nothing. Now get off my land." Morrison held up his hands. "All right, Walter. All right, we're going." He looked at Duke one more time. "But I'm watching. One toe out of line." "We'll be perfect angels," Duke said. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The police left. The dust from their cars hung in the air long after they were gone. Walter's legs gave out. He sat down hard on the porch steps. His heart was racing. His hands wouldn't stop shaking. Duke sat down beside him. "You okay?" "I thought they'd arrest you. I thought someone had planted something." "They tried." Duke's voice was calm. "Preacher saw someone sneaking around the barn last night around 2 a.m. We kept watch after that. If anyone tried to plant anything, we would have caught them." "Jesus." Walter put his head in his hands. "This is insane. This is life." Duke stood up, offering Walter his hand. "Come on, we got a roof to finish." But Walter didn't move. Why do you keep doing this? Why don't you just leave? Go somewhere you're wanted." Duke was quiet for a long time. Then he sat back down. "I ever tell you about my wife?" he asked. "Just that she died. Cancer. Took her 3 years, 3 years of watching her waste away. 3 years of hospitals and treatments and hoping for miracles that never came." Duke's voice was rough. "Near the end, she couldn't do much. Couldn't walk, couldn't cook, couldn't even get out of bed most days. And you know what killed her the most? Not the cancer, the loneliness. All our friends stopped visiting. They couldn't handle seeing her like that. Her own sister stopped calling. It was just me and her alone waiting for the end." Walter's chest tightened. "One day this old guy knocked on our door, neighbor from 3 houses down. We'd never talked to him, never even waved. But he brought soup, Homemade chicken soup. Said his wife had made it before she passed and he still knew the recipe. He came back the next day, and the day after that. Every day for the last 6 months of her life, this old guy brought us food and sat with her while I ran errands. Never asked for anything. Never wanted thanks. Just showed up. Duke's voice cracked. When she died, I lost it. Beat up a guy who tried to steal flowers from her grave. Did 5 years in prison. When I got out, I went to find that old man to thank him properly. He died 2 months after my wife. Heart attack. I never got to tell him what he meant to me. Walter understood now. So when we found your barn that night, Duke continued, and you fed us instead of calling the cops, I saw him. That old man who saved my wife's last months. And I thought, here's my chance. Here's how I pay it back. By being for you what he was for me. I'm not dying, Walter said softly. No, but you were giving up. I could see it in your eyes that first morning. You'd given up, and I couldn't let that happen. Not again. They sat in silence, two old men who'd lived too hard and lost too much finding something like peace on a broken-down farm in Nebraska. Thank you, Walter finally said, for everything, for the work, for the food, for the... He stopped, for paying off my mortgage. Duke didn't confirm or deny it. He just smiled. Roof's not gonna finish itself, he said, standing up. You coming? I'm 90 years old. I can't climb on roofs. Then supervise. Tell us if we're doing it wrong. Walter laughed. Actually laughed. When was the last time he'd done that? They finished the roof that day. By sunset, Walter's barn had a new roof that would last another 30 years. Long after he was gone. Long after anyone remembered why it had been built. The bikers started packing up their tools. This was it, Walter realized. The work was done. They'd be leaving now. Moving on to the next town, the next person who needed help. He wasn't ready. He'd never be ready. So that's it? He asked, his voice small. Duke looked at the farm, at the straight fence, at the strong barn, at the fixed gate and the repaired porch, and all the little things they'd mended over the past 3 weeks. No, he said, that's not it. What do you mean? I mean, we're not done, Duke gestured to the fields. Those fields need tilling before winter. That tractor in the barn needs fixing. Your chicken coop is falling apart. Your garden needs winterizing. We got at least another month of work here, if you'll have us. Walter's eyes burned. I'll have you. Good. Duke clapped him on the shoulder, because we're not going anywhere. That night, Walter called Linda. The police came today, he said. False alarm. Someone made up a story. Linda was quiet. Are you okay? I'm better than okay. Walter looked out his window at the barn, its new roof dark against the sunset. I'm home. Dad, I've talked to those bikers. That Duke guy, he told me about his wife. He told me too. Are they really just helping you, no strings attached? They really are. Linda sighed. Then I'm sorry for not trusting you, for not being there when you needed me, for letting 3 years go by without visiting more. You have your own life, honey. I understand that. But you're my father and I should have been there. I should have noticed you were struggling. I hid it well. That doesn't make it better. Her voice cracked. I'm coming to visit next weekend. Me and the kids. We'll stay the whole weekend. Help with whatever you need. Walter smiled. I'd like that. They talked for another hour. Really talked. For the first time in years. About Martha, about the farm, about life and death and everything in between. When he hung up, Walter felt lighter than he had in years. The next morning started with another rock through another window. This time it came with a note tied around it. Get rid of them or else. Walter held the rock in his hand, reading the words over and over. Duke found him standing in the kitchen, staring at the broken glass. That's it, Duke said. We're leaving. No. Walter, no. Walter set the rock down carefully. You know what this note tells me? It tells me we're winning. They're scared. They're seeing that their threats don't work anymore. That I'm not backing down, so they're escalating. And if we leave now, they win. Or you get hurt. I'm 90 years old, Duke. I'm already hurt. I've been hurt for 3 years, but for the first time since Martha died, I'm also happy. And I'll be damned if I let them take that away from me. Duke studied him for a long moment. Then he nodded. All right, but we're installing security cameras and motion lights and were taking turns keeping watch at night. Deal. They installed the cameras that afternoon. By evening, Walter's farm was lit up like a prison yard. Nothing could move in the dark without being seen. Walter made dinner for all of them that night. Fried chicken, mashed potatoes, corn on the cob. They ate together at his table, these 7 unlikely friends, and talked about everything and nothing. Around midnight, the motion lights went off. Duke was on watch. He saw them coming, 3 trucks, no headlights, parking at the edge of the property. 6 men climbed out carrying something. Baseball bats, maybe. Or worse. Duke woke the others silently. They moved into position around the farm, invisible in the shadows, watching. The men crept forward. They were headed for the barn, maybe to burn it down, maybe to trash it. Whatever they were planning, it wasn't good. They never made it. Duke stepped out of the shadows when they were 10 feet from the barn. "Evening, gentlemen." The men jumped. One dropped his bat. Another actually yelped. The other bikers appeared from different directions surrounding them. They didn't say anything. They didn't have to. 6 Hells Angels, all muscle and leather and silent menace, were more intimidating than any threat could be. "We don't want trouble," Duke said quietly. "We're just fixing an old man's farm, that's all. But if you come back here, if you threaten him again, if you so much as look at his property wrong, we will make you regret it. Are we clear?" The men nodded frantically. "Good. Now pick up your toys and go home." They ran. Actually ran back to their trucks and peeled out, leaving skid marks in the dirt. Duke watched them go, then looked up at Walter's house. The old man was standing in his window watching. Duke gave him a small nod. Walter nodded back. No one came back after that. The threats stopped. The whispers continued, but from a distance now. The town had learned Walter Bren wasn't alone anymore, and his friends weren't the kind of people you messed with. The work continued. The fields were tilled. The tractor was fixed. The chicken coop was rebuilt. The garden was winterized. One by one, every broken thing on Walter's farm was made whole again. And with each repair, Walter felt something inside himself get fixed too. The day Linda arrived with her kids, Walter was making pancakes. It had been 4 weeks since the bikers first showed up, and his kitchen had become a place of constant cooking. Feeding 7 people taught you to think big. He heard the car pull up and his stomach clenched. He hadn't seen his grandchildren in over a year. Maybe longer. Time blurred when you were alone. "Grandpa." The door burst open and suddenly he was surrounded by kids. Emma, 12, now tall and serious like her mother. Jack, 10, all energy and questions. And little Sophie, 7, who wrapped her arms around his legs and wouldn't let go. Walter's eyes burned. He blinked hard, focusing on flipping pancakes. "Something smells amazing," Linda said from the doorway. She looked older. When had she gotten those lines around her eyes made extra, Walter said. "The boys will be here soon." Linda's smile faltered. "The bikers. Their names are Duke, Razor, Tank, Smoke Preacher, and Ghost. And yes, they eat breakfast here most mornings now." Emma pulled away, looking at her mother. "Are they scary?" "No," Walter said firmly. "They're good men who've had hard lives, just like everyone else." The motorcycles arrived right on time. Walter had told Duke about Linda's visit, had offered to skip breakfast today, but Duke had insisted they stick to routine. "Routine is what keeps people steady," Duke had said. "Don't change for us." The kids pressed against the window, watching 6 massive bikers dismount and remove their helmets. Jack's eyes were huge. "They look like superheroes," he whispered. "Or supervillains," Emma muttered. The knock came. Walter opened the door. "Morning, Walter," Duke said. Then he saw Linda and the kids and stopped. "Oh, we can come back later." "Don't be ridiculous. There's enough pancakes for everyone." Walter gestured them in. "This is my daughter Linda and my grandkids Emma, Jack, and Sophie." Duke extended his hand to Linda. She hesitated, then shook it. His hand swallowed hers completely. "Ma'am," Duke said, "your father talks about you all the time." "Does he?" Linda's voice was careful. "Every day." Razor stepped forward, offering his hand. "I'm Michael. That's Duke, David, Marcus, James, and Danny. But we go by our road names mostly." Jack tugged on Walter's sleeve. "Why do they have road names?" "Because their real names are boring," Ghost said, kneeling down to Jack's eye level on. "I mean, Danny, what kind of name is that for a biker?" "A terrible one," Jack agreed solemnly. Ghost grinned. "Exactly. So I became Ghost, Because I'm quiet and people don't notice me until I'm right there. That's so cool, Jack breathed. Breakfast was awkward at first. Too many people crowded around a table meant for six. But Sophie insisted on sitting next to Tank, and Emma asked Preacher about his tattoos, and Jack wouldn't stop asking ghost questions about motorcycles. The ice cracked, then shattered. By the time they finished eating, Linda was laughing at one of Razor's stories about a carpentry job gone wrong. Emma was showing Preacher drawings in her sketchbook. Sophie had fallen asleep against Tank's arm. Walter watched his family and his friends together and felt something break open in his chest. This was what he'd been missing, not just company, but connection, life. "Dad, can I talk to you?" Linda asked quietly. They stepped outside. The morning was cold frost still clinging to the grass. The farm looked different now. Stronger. Whole. "I was wrong," Linda said. "About them. About all of this." "You were scared. That's different. I was scared for the wrong reasons." She looked back at the house. Through the window they could see Emma showing Ghost her drawings while Jack climbed on Duke's back. "I was scared they'd hurt you, but they're healing you. Aren't they?" Walter's throat tightened. "Yeah, they are. I should have been doing that. Me, your daughter, I should have been here." "You had your own life." "That's a bullshit excuse and we both know it." Linda's voice cracked. "I abandoned you when Mom died. I was so wrapped up in my own grief that I forgot you were grieving too. And then I convinced myself you were fine because it was easier than admitting I'd failed you." Linda. "No, let me finish." She wiped her eyes. "These men, these strangers, they saw you. They saw you were struggling and they helped. And I'm your daughter and I didn't. What does that say about me?" Walter pulled her into a hug. She felt small in his arms like she had when she was Sophie's age, crying over scraped knees and hurt feelings. "It says you're human," he said. "It says grief makes us do stupid things. It says we're all just doing the best we can." They stood there for a long time holding each other, letting 3 years of hurt and guilt and loneliness drain away. When they went back inside, Duke was teaching Jack how to shuffle cards. Preacher was helping Emma with her math homework. Razor was showing Linda the new chicken coop plans on his phone. "We thought Walter might want some chickens again," Razor said. "Get some fresh eggs. Give me some dying to take care of." "Mom loved her chickens," Linda said softly. "I know. Walter told us." Of course he had. Walter had told them everything over the past month. About Martha's chickens in her garden, and her laugh, and the way she hummed while she cooked. The bikers had listened to every story, asked questions, remembered details. They'd kept Martha alive in ways Walter couldn't do alone. The weekend passed too quickly. Linda and the kids stayed in Walter's spare rooms, the ones that hadn't been used in years. The house felt full again. Alive. On Sunday morning, Walter woke to find Linda cooking breakfast. "Sit down, Dad," she said. "Let me do this." He sat, watched his daughter move around the kitchen with Martha's confidence. When had she learned to cook like that? "I'm going to start coming every weekend," Linda said. "Me and the kids, if that's okay." "More than okay. And we're going to fix up those spare rooms. Make them nicer. So when we visit, it feels like home." Walter's eyes burned again. He was crying more these days than he had in his entire life. But they were good tears. Healing tears. The bikers showed up for their usual Sunday breakfast. Linda had made enough for everyone. They all squeezed around the table, passing plates, telling stories, laughing. This was family, Walter realized. Not the one he was born into, or even the one he'd made with Martha. This was the family he'd chosen. The one that had chosen him back. After breakfast, Duke pulled Walter aside. "We need to talk about something." Walter's stomach dropped. "You're leaving." "No, not yet anyway." Duke hesitated. "But we got word from the club. They want us back in Colorado. There's some business that needs handling." "When?" 2 weeks, maybe 3. Walter nodded, trying to keep his face neutral. He'd known this was coming. They had lives, responsibilities. They couldn't stay here forever fixing an old man's farm. "But we'll come back," Duke added quickly. "Once the business is handled, we'll come back and finish the chicken coop and help you winterize and—" "Duke." Walter put a hand on his arm. "You don't owe me anything. You've done more than enough already." "It's not about owing." Duke's voice was fierce. "You're family now, and family doesn't abandon family." The word hung between them. Family. "Besides," Duke continued, Tank's ex-wife finally agreed to let him see his kids. They live 3 hours from here. He's going to need a place to stay when he visits. Figured he could stay here, if that's all right. Walter's throat closed up. Of course it's all right. And preacher's starting a woodworking class at the community college in town. Razor's helping him set it up. They'll be around a lot. You've been planning this. We've been planning a lot of things. Duke smiled. You didn't think we'd just leave and forget about you, did you? The 2 weeks passed in a blur of activity. The chicken coop was finished bigger and better than the old one. Linda brought chickens from a farm near her house, 6 hens that immediately made themselves at home. Walter named them after Martha's old chickens, Henrietta, Beatrice, Mildred, Dolores, Agnes, and Gladys. You gave your chickens old lady names? Ghost asked. Martha did. Said they had old lady attitudes, so they deserved old lady names. Ghost laughed. Your wife sounds like she was something special. She was. She really was. The night before the bikers left, Walter made a feast. Pot roast, mashed potatoes, green beans, fresh bread, and apple pie for dessert. Everyone came. Linda and the kids, the bikers. Even Joe Patterson showed up, hat in hand, mumbling an apology. I was wrong about you boys, Patterson said to Duke. Wrong about this whole situation. I let fear make me stupid. We're used to it, Duke said, but his voice wasn't unkind. Takes people time to see past the leather and the patches. We get that. Doesn't make it right. No, but it makes it human. They ate until they couldn't eat anymore. Sophie fell asleep in Tank's lap again. Emma showed everyone her new sketches of the farm. Jack made Duke promise to teach him to ride a motorcycle someday. When you're older, Duke said, and with your mom's permission. Never, Linda said, but she was smiling. Around midnight, after everyone had left except the bikers, Walter sat on his porch with Duke. You changed my life, Walter said. You know that, right? You changed ours too. Duke lit a cigarette, then immediately put it out. Sorry, trying to quit. Martha tried for 20 years to get me to quit. Never worked. What finally did it? She died. Didn't seem right to keep doing something she'd hated so much. They sat in silence, listening to the night sounds. Crickets and wind and the distant sound of the highway. What happened after your wife died? Walter asked. After you got out of prison. Duke was quiet for a long time. I wanted to die. That's the truth of it. I wanted to follow her wherever she'd gone. Didn't matter if it was heaven or hell or just nothing. I wanted to be with her. What stopped you? The club. Duke Morrison, that's not my real name, you know. Real name's Robert. Robert James Morrison. But when I joined the Angels, I became Duke. New name, new life, new purpose. He leaned back. They gave me a reason to wake up every morning. Gave me brothers who understood what it meant to lose everything. And slowly, day by day, I found reasons to keep living. And now I help other people find their reasons. Duke looked at Walter. Like you. Walter's chest felt tight. I found my reason. Multiple reasons. My daughter, my grandkids, 6 crazy bikers who showed up in my barn. 6 handsome, helpful bikers, Duke corrected. Walter laughed. That too. The next morning they left. 6 motorcycles pulling out of Walter's driveway as the sun came up. Walter stood watching until he couldn't hear the engines anymore. Linda and the kids were still asleep inside. The house was quiet, but not empty, not lonely, just peaceful. Walter walked to the barn and fed the chickens. Henrietta pecked at his boots just like the original Henrietta used to do. Some things never changed. He spent the day working, real work, not just watching other people work. He fixed a wobbly step on the porch, cleaned out the gutters, pruned the rose bushes Martha had loved. His body ached, but it was a good ache, the ache of being useful. That night, Linda made dinner. They ate together, the 4 of them, and it felt right. Are you going to be okay, Grandpa? Emma asked. Now that they're gone, yeah, sweetie, I'm going to be fine. And he was. He really was. The days turned into weeks. Linda came every weekend, sometimes with the kids, sometimes alone. They fixed up the spare rooms together, painted walls, replaced old curtains, made the house feel lived in again. Tank showed up on a Thursday, nervous and excited. Seeing my kids tomorrow, he said, first time in 3 years. You can stay here as long as you need, Walter told him. Tank stayed in one of the newly fixed spare rooms. He was gone most of Friday, But when he came back that evening, he was crying. Happy tears. They remembered me, he said. My kids. They actually remembered me. Of course they did. You're their father. But I haven't been there. I missed birthdays and first days of school and soccer games and everything. Then don't miss the next ones. Walter handed him a beer. You got a second chance. Don't waste it. Tank visited his kids every Friday after that. He'd stay at Walter's help with farm work, then drive 3 hours to see his children. Slowly, carefully, he rebuilt what he'd broken. Preacher and Razor came back 2 weeks later to start their woodworking class. They stayed at Walter's too, sleeping in the barn loft they'd converted into a bunkhouse. Hope you don't mind, Preacher said. We kind of assumed you'd be okay with it. Mind, I love it. House hasn't been this full since Martha was alive. The woodworking class was a hit. 12 students, mostly veterans and former addicts, learning to build and create instead of destroy. Preacher taught with patience Walter had never seen in anyone except Martha. One student, a kid named Tommy with a drug problem, and a record reminded Walter of Ghost. Same haunted eyes, same desperate need to be better than his past. Can I talk to you? Tommy asked Walter one afternoon. Sure, son. They sat on the porch, this 90-year-old farmer and this 25-year-old addict, and talked about life and mistakes and second chances. Everyone thinks I'm going to fail, Tommy said. My parents, my old friends, even my probation officer. They're all just waiting for me to screw up again. So prove them wrong. What if I can't? What if I'm not strong enough? Then you get back up and try again. Walter leaned forward. You know what I learned from Duke and his boys? That being strong isn't about never falling down. It's about getting back up every single time, even when it hurts, even when you don't want to. You get back up. Tommy wiped his eyes. You really believe that? I'm 90 years old and I'm still getting back up. So yeah, I believe it. Tommy came back every week after that. Sometimes for class, sometimes just to talk. Walter gave him small jobs around the farm, paid him in cash, in home-cooked meals. Watched him slowly transform from a broken kid into a young man with purpose. Winter came hard and fast. Snow covered the farm, turning everything white and clean. Walter's new roof held strong against the storms. His new fence stood straight despite the wind. His barn stayed warm and dry. Duke called every Sunday night. How are you holding up? He'd ask. Good, real good. Tank treating you all right. He's family now. You all are. Yeah, Duke said softly. We are. Christmas approached. Linda insisted on hosting at the farm. We'll have everyone, she said. Me and Tom and the kids. The bikers if they can make it. Joe Patterson and his wife. Everyone. That's a lot of people. This house was meant for a lot of people, Dad. Let's fill it up. They did. Christmas Eve brought 20 people to Walter's farm. Duke and the others rode through a snowstorm to get there. Tank brought his kids, who immediately bonded with Walter's grandkids. Preacher brought Tommy, who helped in the kitchen and smiled more than Walter had ever seen. Razor brought his daughter, who'd finally agreed to speak to him again after 8 years of silence. They ate and then laughed and told stories. Someone started singing Christmas carols. The kids played in the snow. The adults drank too much eggnog and reminisced about Christmases past. Walter stood in his kitchen, looking at his full house, his full life, and felt Martha's presence so strongly it took his breath away. You were right, he whispered to her memory. People aren't defined by their worst day. They're defined by what they do after it. Linda found him there, tears streaming down his face. Dad, you okay? I'm perfect, honey. Absolutely perfect. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, Walter sat on his porch, wrapped in blankets, watching the snow fall. Duke joined him, 2 beers in hand. Couldn't sleep, Duke said, offering Walter a beer. Me neither. Too much happiness keeps a man awake. They drank in comfortable silence. You know what I realized tonight, Duke said. We were all broken when we found you. Every single one of us. Broken by life and bad choices and worse luck. And somehow fixing your farm fixed us too. Or maybe we fixed each other. Yeah, maybe we did. The snow kept falling, covering everything in fresh white possibility. Walter thought about the year that had passed, about rocks through windows and threats and fear, about pancakes and pot roast and late-night conversations, about fence posts and roof shingles and chicken coops, about family, both the one you're born into and the one you choose. Duke, Walter said, thank you for everything, for staying when you could have left, for paying off my mortgage when you didn't have to, for giving me a reason to keep living. You don't have to thank me. Yeah, I do. Walter looked at him. Because if you hadn't shown up that morning, if you hadn't crashed in my barn that night, I'd be dead right now. Maybe not physically, but inside where it counts. I was already dead, and you brought me back to life. Duke's eyes were wet. You brought us back to life too, old man. Don't forget that. They sat there until the sun came up, two men who'd survived too much and found each other anyway, watching the world turn white and new and full of second chances. Inside the house was full of sleeping people, family, friends, brothers, sisters, children, all of them broken in their own ways, all of them healing together. Walter thought about Martha, about how she'd always said that the best Christmas present was people, not things. That what mattered wasn't what you had, but who you had it with. She'd been right, like always. The farm stood strong against the winter storm. The barn roof held, the fence stood straight, the chickens huddled together in their warm coop. Everything that had been broken was fixed. And Walter Bren, 90 years old and alive in ways he hadn't been in years, watched the sunrise over his farm and knew with absolute certainty that he was exactly where he was supposed to be, with exactly the people he was supposed to be with, doing exactly what he was supposed to be doing, living. The call came 3 days after Christmas. Walter was feeding the chickens when his phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer. Mr. Bren, a woman's voice tight with urgency. This is Grace Memorial Hospital in Colorado. You're listed as an emergency contact for Robert Morrison. Walter's heart stopped. Duke, what happened? He was in an accident, motorcycle collision on I-25. He's in surgery now. It's serious. The phone slipped from Walter's hand. He stood there frozen, staring at nothing, while Henrietta pecked at his boots and the world tilted sideways. Tank found him 20 minutes later, still standing in the same spot. Walter, what's wrong? Duke. The word came out broken. Hospital? Colorado? Accident? Tank's face went white. He pulled out his phone, fingers shaking as he dialed. Walter couldn't hear what he was saying. Everything sounded like it was underwater. Within an hour, Razor and Preacher arrived. They'd been teaching a class in town. Ghost showed up 30 minutes later, having driven like a madman from 3 states away. Only Smoke was missing somewhere in Montana on club business. We're going, Razor said. All of us. Right now. I can't ride a motorcycle, Walter said. His voice sounded strange to his own ears. Then you're riding in my truck, Tank said, because you're coming. Duke would want you there. They packed fast. Tank threw clothes in a bag for both of them. Preacher called Linda to explain. Ghost filled thermoses with coffee. Razor mapped the fastest route. They left within 2 hours. Tank drove Walter in the passenger seat, the 3 bikers on their motorcycles following behind like a funeral procession. The drive to Colorado was supposed to take 8 hours. They made it in 6. Grace Memorial was a massive building that smelled like antiseptic and fear. Walter had been in too many hospitals watching Martha die. He hated everything about them. A nurse directed them to the surgical waiting room. The other angels were already there. 15 massive men in leather sitting in plastic chairs, heads in hands, praying or cursing, or both. One of them stood when he saw Tank. He was older than Duke, maybe 60, with gray in his beard and scars on his face that told stories Walter didn't want to know. You made it, the man said. His voice was rough, like he'd been screaming or crying. How is he? Tank asked. Still in surgery, been 4 hours now. They said his back is broken, ribs, arm, pelvis, internal bleeding. The other guy ran a red light, hit him broadside, doing 60. The man's hands clenched into fists. Other guy walked away without a scratch. Walter felt something hot and violent rise in his chest. He'd never been a violent man, but in that moment, he understood why people killed. This is Walter, Tank said. The old man Duke's been helping. The older biker looked at Walter and something in his face softened. I'm Steele, club president. Duke's told me about you, a lot about you. He's going to make it, Walter said. It wasn't a question. It was a command to the universe. Steele's jaw tightened. Doctors aren't sure yet. They waited. Hours blurred together. Nurses came and went with updates that weren't really updates. Still in surgery. Stable. Critical. Words that meant everything and nothing. Walter sat in a chair that hurt his back and prayed to a God he wasn't sure he believed in anymore. Please, not Duke, not after everything. Don't take him too. Linda called, Dad, are you okay? No. Do you want me to come? No, stay with the kids. I'll call you when I know something. Ghost sat down next to Walter. The young man looked even younger now, scared and lost. He's the one who saved me, Ghost said quietly. After my brother died, I was going to kill the guy who did it. Had the gun had the plan, had the moment. Duke stopped me, literally tackled me to the ground, took the gun away, told me that revenge wouldn't bring my brother back, it'd just destroy me too. He's good at saving people, Walter said. He's the best person I know. Ghost's voice cracked, and I never told him that. I never thanked him properly. I just assumed there'd be time. There will be time. Walter grabbed Ghost's hand, held it tight. There has to be time. More waiting, more praying. Tank paced like a caged animal. Razor sat with his head against the wall, eyes closed. Preacher actually prayed, his lips moving silently. The other angels were scattered around the waiting room, these hard men reduced to helpless boys by fear and love. A doctor finally emerged around midnight. Everyone jumped to their feet. Family of Robert Morrison. We're his family, Steele said. The doctor looked at the 15 bikers and one old man and nodded slowly. He made it through surgery, but the next 24 hours are critical. He's got a long recovery ahead. Months, maybe a year, and we're not sure yet if he'll walk again. The words hit like physical blows. Won't walk. Duke, who lived on his motorcycle, who was always moving, always working, might never walk again. Can we see him? Walter heard himself ask. He's in ICU, only 2 visitors at a time, immediate family only. I'm his grandfather, Walter lied. The words came out steady, confident. I need to see my grandson. The doctor looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. Room 407, 10 minutes and no more. Steele started to object, but Walter was already walking. Tank followed and nobody stopped them. Duke looked small in the hospital bed. That was the first shock. This massive man who'd rebuilt Walter's farm with his bare hands looked shrunken, broken, held together by machines and tubes and prayers. Walter's legs almost gave out. Tank caught him, guided him to a chair beside the bed. Duke. Walter's voice was barely a whisper. It's Walter. I'm here. You hear me? I'm here. Duke didn't respond, didn't move, just lay there breathing with the help of machines. You don't get to do this, Walter said louder now. You don't get to save my life and then give up on yours. That's not how this works. You hear me? You made me keep fighting, so now you have to keep fighting too. Still nothing. The farm needs you, Walter continued, his voice breaking. The chickens miss you, Henrietta especially. She pecks at your motorcycle when you're gone, and Tank needs you. His kids need you. Tommy needs you. All those broken people you've been fixing need you to show them that broken doesn't mean finished. Tank put a hand on Walter's shoulder. And I need you, Kirk, Walter whispered. I need you, son. So you fight. You fight like hell. You understand me. Duke's fingers twitched. Just barely, but they moved. Walter grabbed his hand, held it tight. That's right. You fight. They stayed the full 10 minutes, then a nurse kicked them out. The waiting room had filled with more people, other club members from across the state, a few women who must have been quees or girlfriends, everyone waiting, hoping, praying. Walter couldn't stay in the waiting room. Too many people, too much fear. He found a small chapel down the hall and sat in the back pew. He hadn't prayed in years, not since Martha died. What was the point of praying to a God who let good people suffer? But he prayed now, not fancy words or formal requests, just the truth. I know I'm asking a lot. I know I don't deserve any favors. But please, please don't take him. Not yet. He's got so much good left to do. So many people left to save. And I'm selfish, and I'm old, and I need him to save me a little while longer. He sat there until dawn talking to God or Martha, or the universe, or whoever might be listening. Tank found him around 6 in the morning. He's awake. Walter moved faster than he had in years. They burst into the ICU, ignored the nurse's protests, went straight to Duke's room. Duke's eyes were open, barely but open. He saw Walter and something like a smile crossed his battered face. Old man, Duke croaked. You came. Of course I came, you idiot. Walter was crying and didn't care. You scared the hell out of me. Sorry. Duke tried to move and gasped in pain. Can't feel my legs. Doctor said that might be temporary, swelling on your spine. They won't know for sure until it goes down. And if it's not temporary, Walter gripped his hand harder. Then we figure it out. Together. That's what family does. Duke's eyes closed. Tired. Then rest. I'll be here when you wake up. Farm is fine. Everything's fine. You just focus on healing. Duke drifted back to sleep. Walter stayed in that chair all day holding his hand, refusing to leave, even when nurses tried to make him. The days blurred together. Duke in and out of consciousness. Surgeries to insert rods in his back. Physical therapists trying to assess damage. Doctors with cautious optimism or realistic pessimism depending on who you asked. The swelling went down. Duke still couldn't feel his legs. It's been a week, the doctor said. If sensation hasn't returned by now, it'll return, Duke interrupted. I'm not giving up. But Walter could see the fear in his eyes. Duke without his motorcycle, without his mobility, without his independence, it would destroy him. On day 9, Walter was reading to Duke from a book about farming when Duke suddenly gasped. What's wrong? My foot. Duke's eyes were huge. Walter, I felt my foot. It itched and I felt it. Walter hit the call button so hard he thought he broke it. Nurses and doctors flooded the room. They poked and prodded while Duke swore he could feel things. Wiggle your toes, a doctor ordered. Duke's face contorted with effort. Nothing happened. Then his right big toe moved. Just a tiny bit barely visible, but it moved. The room erupted. Nurses cheering, doctors cautiously excited, Duke crying, Walter crying, everyone crying. It's not a guarantee, the doctor cautioned. It could be temporary or partial. You might need a wheelchair, braces, years of physical therapy. I don't care, Duke said. I'll do whatever it takes. I'm getting out of this bed. I'm walking again. You're damn right you are, Walter said. Recovery was hell. Duke had always been strong, but this tested him in ways violence and prison never had. Every day brought new pain, new frustrations, new moments where he wanted to quit. On the bad days, Walter sat with him and told stories about Martha and the farm and the chickens, and Tommy's progress in woodworking class, about Linda and the grandkids, about Tank's kids and how much they loved their father, about all the people waiting for Duke to come home. You're needed, Walter would say, not for what you can do, but for who you are, and that doesn't change whether you're walking or rolling. On day 15, Duke stood. With a walker and 2 therapists and Walter watching from a chair, Duke stood on his own 2 feet for the first time since the accident. He lasted 5 seconds before collapsing back onto the bed, sobbing with pain and triumph. 5 seconds today, Walter said. 10 tomorrow. By next month, you'll be running. I'll never run again. Then you'll walk, and that'll be enough. It wasn't enough for Duke, though. He pushed himself brutally. Physical therapy 3 times a day, extra exercises at night. He fell constantly, bruised himself, made his injuries worse trying to heal faster. You're going to hurt yourself, Walter warned. I'm already hurt. Now I'm getting unhurt. That's not how this works. It's how I work. Steele visited regularly. He pulled Walter aside one afternoon. He's pushing too hard, Steele said. He's going to do permanent damage. He's stubborn, always has been. It's more than that. Steele lit a cigarette outside the hospital. Duke's whole identity is wrapped up in being strong, being the one who saves people. If he can't do that anymore, if he's the one who needs saving, then he learns to accept help, Walter said firmly. Like I had to learn, like all of us have to learn eventually. But Duke didn't want to learn. He wanted to recover, to be strong again, to go back to being the man who fixed everyone else's problems. On day 20, he collapsed during physical therapy, pushed too hard and ignored the therapist's warnings, and his body gave out. He hit the floor hard enough to crack a rib that had just finished healing. Walter found him an hour later lying in bed staring at the ceiling with dead eyes. I can't do this, Duke said. Yes, you can. No, I can't. I'm broken, Walter. Really broken. Maybe permanently. And I don't know how to be that person. Walter sat down, his old bones protesting. You know what Martha said to me after her first round of chemo, when she lost her hair and couldn't keep food down and looked like a skeleton? She said, I'm not less of a person because my body's failing me. I'm the same person I always was, just in a different package. That's different. It's exactly the same. You're not less of a person because you can't walk yet. You're still Duke. You're still the man who saved my farm and my life and Tommy's future and Tank's relationship with his kids. None of that changes because of what your legs can or can't do. Duke turned his face away. I wanted to be strong for you, for everyone. You are strong. Being strong isn't about carrying everything alone. It's about accepting help when you need it, about being vulnerable, about admitting you're human. I hate being human. Walter laughed, actually laughed. Yeah, me too. It's the worst. But it's all we've got. They sat in silence for a while. Finally, Duke spoke. Will you help me? Help you what? Help me learn how to be broken without giving up. Help me figure out how to live if I can't walk right again. Help me be okay with being not okay. Walter took Duke's hand. Yeah, son, I can do that. The recovery changed after that. Duke stopped pushing so hard, started listening to his therapists, accepted his limitations while working within them. Some days he could walk 20 feet with a walker. Other days he could barely stand. He learned to be okay with both. Walter stayed. Tank brought him clothes and books. Linda called every day. The grandkids sent drawings. Razor and Preacher visited on weekends. Ghost came whenever he could, bringing news from the farm. Tommy finished his first project. Ghost reported one Saturday. A rocking chair. He cried when it was done. Said it was the first thing he'd ever built that wasn't destroyed or stolen. Good for him, Duke said. He was sitting up now, legs dangling off the side of the bed. Tell him I'm proud of him. You can tell him yourself when you get home. If I get home. When, Walter corrected. Not if, when. On day 32, Duke walked the length of the hospital corridor, with a walker slowly stopping to rest 3 times. But he walked. The nurses cheered. Other patients clapped. Steele, who'd driven 6 hours to be there for this moment, wiped his eyes and tried to pretend he wasn't crying. Proud of you, brother, Steele said. Duke leaned heavily on his walker, sweating and shaking. I'm not there yet. No, but you're getting there. They released Duke on day 38, not healed, not fully mobile, but stable enough to continue recovery at home. The question was where home would be. Colorado, Steele said. We've got people who can help you. A place set up on the ground floor. Nebraska, Duke interrupted. I'm going back to Nebraska. Duke, Walter needs me, and I need him. Steele looked at Walter. You up for this? Taking care of someone who can barely walk. We'll take care of each other, Walter said. That's how it works. They drove back together, Tank at the wheel, Duke in the passenger seat with his legs elevated. Walter in the back. The bikers followed on their motorcycles, a protective convoy, making sure their brother got home safe. Home. Duke kept saying the word like he was testing it out. Going home, back, home, home. Never had a real home before, have you? Walter asked. Duke shook his head. Not since my wife died, just places I stayed. But your farm, that feels like home. Then that's what it is. They pulled up to this farm at sunset. Linda and the kids were waiting along with Joe Patterson and half the town. People who'd threatened and judged and feared now stood there with food and flowers and sheepish apologies. We heard what happened, Patterson said. We wanted to help. Duke looked at them, all these people who'd hated him, and something in his face broke open. Thank you. They carried him inside because the porch steps were still too hard to manage. Set him up in one of the spare rooms that Linda had fixed up. The bed was low, the bathroom was close, everything was arranged for someone who couldn't move easily. You did this for me, Duke said to Linda. You saved my father's life. This is the least I can do. That night, Walter made dinner for Duke, the way Duke had made breakfast for him months ago. Pot roast and mashed potatoes and fresh bread. They ate together in Duke's room, the TV playing quietly in the background. I'm scared, Duke admitted. What if I don't heal right? What if I can't work anymore? What if... Then we figure it out, Walter said. Together, one day at a time. That's all life is anyway. A series of days we figure out together. Duke nodded, but Walter could see the fear still there. The uncertainty, the loss of identity that came from losing the body you'd always relied on. Over the next weeks, Duke learned to navigate the farm. First with a walker, then with the warrant then sometimes with nothing at all on good days. He fell a lot, bruised his pride more than his body, learned to ask for help, which was harder than learning to walk again. Tommy came by every afternoon to keep Duke company. They'd sit on the porch and talk about recovery and addiction and all the ways life broke people. "You're proof it gets better," Tommy said one day. "That broken doesn't mean finished." "I'm not proof of anything yet. I'm still figuring this out." "That's the proof that you're still trying," Tank's ex-wife called one evening. Walter answered because Duke was napping. "Is David there?" She sounded nervous. "He's resting. Can I take a message and just tell him thank you for being consistent with the kids, for showing up every week even when it's hard, for being the father he always should have been." Her voice cracked. "And tell him that maybe if he wants, he could come to Tommy Jr.'s birthday party next month, as a guest, not just a visitor." Walter told Duke when he woke up. Duke cried. Happy tears, the kind that healed instead of hurt. "She's giving me another chance," Duke said. "I don't deserve it, but she's giving me one anyway." That's what people do. They give chances they don't have to give, because that's what love is. Razor's daughter came to visit. She was in her 20s, pretty and scared and angry all at once. She stood in Walter's kitchen and looked at her father like he was a stranger. "I'm sorry," Razor said, "for everything, for missing your childhood, for choosing the bottle over you, for being a terrible father." "You're 8 years sober," she said. "Why did it take you 8 years to reach out?" "Because I was a coward, because I thought you were better off without me, because I didn't know how to be a father. And now you do." "No, but I want to learn, if you'll let me." They talked for hours. By the end, she wasn't calling him by his road name anymore. She was calling him Dad. Winter deepened. The farm became a haven for broken people learning to heal. Duke doing his physical therapy in the living room, Tank spending weekends there between visits with his kids, Razor teaching his daughter to build bookshelves in the barn, Preacher and Tommy running woodworking classes, Ghost bringing new people who needed help, needed hope, needed a place where broken was okay. Walter watched his farm transform from a place of loneliness into a place of community. His kitchen was always full, his table was always crowded, his rooms were always occupied. "This is what Martha wanted," he said to Duke one night, "for this place to be full of life and love and people healing together." Then she got her wish. We all did. On Valentine's Day, Duke walked without his cane for the first time. He made it from the barn to the house, a distance of maybe 100 yards, moving it slowly but steadily. Walter watched from the porch, his heart full. "I did it," Duke said when he reached the steps. "You did it." They stood there, these two broken men who'd saved each other, and watched the sun set over a farm that had become so much more than either of them had ever dreamed. Spring came early that year, melting the snow and bringing green back to the fields. Walter stood in his garden, hands deep in soil for the first time in 4 years, planting Martha's tomatoes. Duke watched from a chair nearby, his cane resting against the armrest. "You're doing it wrong." "I've been planting tomatoes for 70 years. I think I know what I'm doing." "You're planting them too close together. They need room to breathe." Walter sat back on his heels. "When did you become a gardening expert?" "Last month. Read 3 books while I was laid up. Martha's gardening journal, too. Found it in your attic." Duke smiled. "She wrote about these tomatoes. Said they were temperamental but worth it." Walter's throat tightened. "You read her journal. Hope that's okay." It felt like getting to know her through her words. "It's more than okay." Walter wiped his eyes with a dirt-covered hand, probably smearing mud across his face. "What else did she say?" "That you were stubborn and impossible in the love of her life. That this garden was her therapy. That she wanted it to outlive her, wanted someone to keep it going." Duke leaned forward. "So let me help. I can't do the heavy work yet, but I can tell you where things go. We'll do it together." They spent the morning planting. Duke directing, Walter doing the physical work, both of them learning to work as a team in this new way. By noon, the garden was full of seeds and possibilities. Linda arrived with the kids for lunch. She did that now, showed up unannounced with food and laughter and life. Emma had brought her sketchbook again, pages filled with drawings of the farm and the bikers and chickens with attitude. "Grandpa, look." Emma showed him a drawing of Duke walking without his cane. "This is for when he's all better." Duke took the drawing, his hands gentle. This is beautiful, Emma. Thank you. Mom says you're a hero, that you saved Grandpa's life. Your grandpa saved mine first. Then you saved each other. Sophie climbed into Duke's lap, fearless and trusting. That's what heroes do. They ate lunch on the porch, sandwiches and lemonade and cookies Linda had baked. Jack talked nonstop about wanting a motorcycle when he turned 16. Linda kept saying absolutely not while Tom, her husband, tried not to laugh. You could teach him to be safe, Tom said to Duke. When he's older, much older. Tom, Linda smacked his arm. What the kid's gonna do it anyway? Better to learn from someone who knows what they're doing. Duke caught Walter's eye and smiled. This was family, messy and loud and imperfect and exactly right. That afternoon, a car pulled up. Expensive, shiny, out of place on a farm. A man in a suit climbed out carrying a briefcase. Walter's stomach dropped. Nothing good came from men in suits carrying briefcases. Mr. Bren, I'm James Chen from First National Bank. If this is about money, it's not. Actually, I'm here about the anonymous payment that was made on your mortgage last year. Chen opened his briefcase. The donor has come forward. They'd like to meet you. Walter's heart stopped. Duke, it wasn't me, Duke said quietly. I swear. Then who? A second car pulled up. This one was a pickup truck, old and dusty. Joe Patterson climbed out, looking nervous. Joe. Walter frowned. What's this about? Patterson walked up slowly, hat in his hands. I need to tell you something. Something I should have told you months ago. Joe, it was me. Patterson's voice cracked. I paid off your mortgage. Me and 15 other farmers in the county, we all pitched in. Walter couldn't breathe, couldn't think. What? After your wife died, we felt bad. We should have helped you. Should have checked in, should have done something. But we didn't. We were cowards. Patterson looked at the ground. Then these bikers showed up and we got angry. Not because they were dangerous, because they were doing what we should have been doing. They were helping you, and that made us look bad, made us feel bad. So you tried to run them off, Duke said, his voice hard. Yeah, we did, and we were wrong. So damn wrong. Patterson looked at Walter. When they wouldn't leave when you defended them, we realized something. You'd rather have strangers who treated you right than neighbors who treated you wrong. And that shame God, that shame ate at us. So you paid off my mortgage. We wanted to do something big enough to matter. $47,000 split between 16 families. About $3,000 each. It hurt, but not as much as watching you struggle alone for 3 years. Walter sat down hard on the porch steps. Duke's hand found his shoulder. We wanted to tell you, Patterson continued, but we were embarrassed. How do you tell someone you failed them? How do you apologize for 3 years of neglect? You just did, Walter said softly. Patterson wiped his eyes. I'm sorry, Walter. We all are. We failed you when Martha died, and we failed you when you needed us. And we failed ourselves by being too proud to admit it. Why now? Why tell me now? Because the bank needed the donor's information for tax purposes. Because I couldn't hide behind anonymous anymore. Patterson stepped closer. And because you deserve to know that people care about you, even if we showed it too late. Chen cleared his throat. I'll need you to sign some papers, Mr. Bren, acknowledging the gift for tax purposes. Walter signed in a daze. His neighbors had paid off his mortgage, the same neighbors who'd thrown rocks through his windows, who'd called the police, who'd threatened and judged and tried to force the bikers away. After Chen left, Patterson lingered. Can I ask you something? Patterson said to Duke. Why'd you stay? After everything we did to you, why'd you keep helping Walter? Because he needed help, Duke said simply. Because he treated us like human beings when no one else would. Because that's what you do when you find someone worth fighting for. You fight. Patterson nodded slowly. Will you teach me, teach all of us how to be better neighbors? You're asking a Hell's Angel for life lessons. I'm asking a good man who knows how to see people, really see them. Something we forgot how to do. Duke looked at Walter. Walter nodded. All right, Duke said, but you start by actually showing up, not just when it's convenient, not just when you feel guilty. You show up on the hard days, the boring days, the days when nothing dramatic is happening, but someone still needs to know they matter. Deal. Patterson left, but his words hung in the air. Walter walked to the edge of his property and looked at his neighbors' farms. He'd lived here 70 years. He'd grown up with some of these people, gone to school with them, married near them, buried his wife among them. And yet it took 6 strangers to show them all what community really meant. "You okay?" Duke asked, coming up beside him. "They paid off my mortgage." "Yeah, because you shamed them into it." "No, because you showed them what real friendship looks like, what real help looks like. They saw us working here every day and realized what they'd been missing." Duke leaned on his cane. Sometimes people need to see the right thing being done before they remember how to do it themselves. That night, Walter couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about Patterson's face, about the shame and regret and desperate need for redemption. He'd seen that same look in Duke's eyes after the accident, in Tank's eyes when he talked about his kids, in Razor's eyes when his daughter walked away the first time. Redemption. That's what they were all seeking. Second chances. Proof that yesterday's failures didn't define tomorrow's possibilities. Around 2 a.m. Walter got up and walked to Duke's room. The light was on. "Can't sleep either," Duke asked. "Too much in my head." "Yeah, me too." Walter sat in the chair beside Duke's bed. "Thank you." "For what?" "For showing me that it's never too late. To change, to grow, to become better. You did that. You showed me and this whole town that broken people can fix themselves." "We're not fixed yet." "No, but we're trying, and that's what matters." They sat in comfortable silence, 2 men who'd saved each other more times than either could count. "I've been thinking," Duke said, "about what happens next. I can walk now. Not great, but I can walk. Which means I can work. Which means you're leaving." Walter's chest tightened. "No, I'm staying. If you'll have me, permanently." Walter stared at him. "What? This place, this farm, it's home. Real home. And I don't want to leave. I want to stay and help you work this land and turn it into something bigger. A real sanctuary, a place where broken people come to heal." Duke. "Preacher and Razor want to expand the woodworking program. Tank wants to start a mentorship thing for fathers trying to rebuild relationships with their kids. Tommy's talking about a recovery program. Even Ghost wants to help, though he's not sure how yet." Duke's eyes were bright. "We could make this place matter. Really matter. If you're willing." Walter's eyes burned. "You'd stay, really stay. If you'll have me." "I'll have you." Walter grabbed Duke's hand. "God, yes, I'll have all of you." The next morning they called a meeting. Everyone showed up. Linda and Tom and the kids, the bikers, Tommy and the woodworking students, Patterson and some of the other farmers. Steele drove up from Colorado with several club members. Even Sheriff Morrison came curious and cautious. Walter stood on his porch looking at the crowd gathered in his yard and felt Martha's presence so strongly he almost turned to look for her. "This farm almost died," Walter said. "After my wife passed, I almost let it die, almost let myself die with it. But these men," he gestured to Duke and the others, "they reminded me that nothing's over until you give up. That broken can be fixed. That community isn't about geography or blood. It's about showing up for each other. So here's what we're proposing," Duke said, standing with his cane. "We turn this farm into a real sanctuary, a place where veterans can come for free woodworking classes, where addicts can find support, where fathers can learn to rebuild relationships, where anyone who's broken can come and learn that broken doesn't mean finished. The Bren Sanctuary," Razor added, "named after Martha and Walter, a living memorial to what they built here." The crowd was silent. Then Patterson spoke up. "What do you need from us?" "Everything," Duke said honestly. "Volunteers, donations, time, skills, patience. This only works if the whole community invests in it." "Then we're in," Patterson said. Several other farmers nodded. "We can help with permits and legal stuff," Chen said. He'd stayed after yesterday, apparently invested in seeing this through. "I can donate some equipment," another farmer offered. "My church has a building fund we could redirect," someone else said. The offers kept coming: money, time, materials, expertise. The same community that had abandoned Walter 3 years ago was now fighting to be part of his future. Linda was crying. Tom had his arm around her. The kids looked confused but excited. Steele stepped forward. "The club's in too. We'll spread the word. Bring people who need this. Support it however we can." Walter couldn't speak. His throat was too tight, his heart too full. Duke put a hand on his shoulder. What do you say, old man, want to change the world? I'm 91 years old. I don't have much time left to change anything. Then we better get started. The transformation happened fast. Within weeks, the barn was converted into a workshop space. The old chicken coop became a meeting room. The fields were split, half for farming, half for a community garden where people could work together. Tommy graduated from student to teacher, leading recovery meetings in the barn every Tuesday. Tank started his fatherhood group, 8 men sitting in a circle talking about mistakes and forgiveness and trying to be better. Razor's woodworking program expanded to 3 classes a week. Duke became the unofficial manager, coordinating everything from his chair on the porch. He still couldn't walk for long periods, but he could plan and organize and inspire. That was enough. Linda quit her job in the city. We're moving closer, she told Walter. Tom found work in town. The kids can go to school here. We're coming home. You don't have to. Yes, we do. I lost 3 years with you, Dad. I'm not losing any more. They found a house 10 minutes away, close enough to help daily, far enough to maintain independence. Emma started volunteering with the woodworking program. Jack helped Duke with administrative work. Sophie appointed herself official chicken keeper. The farm became alive in ways it hadn't been even when Martha was there. 20, 30, sometimes 40 people a day. Veterans finding purpose. Addicts finding hope. Fathers finding forgiveness. All of them finding community. And Walter found himself at the center of it, this 91-year-old man who'd almost given up, now giving others reasons to keep going. One afternoon in late spring, a young woman showed up with a baby. She was thin and scared and looked like she hadn't slept in days. Is this the place, she asked, where broken people come? Yeah, Duke said gently. This is the place. What's your name? Sarah, I left my husband. He was hurting me, hurting our baby. I don't have anywhere to go. Someone at a shelter told me about this place. Said you help people. Walter appeared on the porch. You hungry? Sarah nodded, tears streaming down her face. Come on inside. Let's get you and that baby fed. They set her up in one of the spare rooms, fed her, let her rest, connected her with resources, lawyer support groups. Within a week, she was helping in the garden, the baby strapped to her chest, healing one day at a time. This is what it's for, Duke said to Walter that night. This place, these people, this is exactly what it's for. Summer came. The garden exploded with vegetables. Martha's tomatoes grew tall and produced more fruit than they could eat. Walter stood among them one morning, touching the leaves, smelling the earth. We did it, Martha, he whispered. We made something that matters. The bank manager, Chen, became a regular volunteer. Sheriff Morrison started sending people who needed help instead of jail time. Patterson organized other farmers to donate equipment and supplies. The town that had judged was now supporting. The community that had abandoned was now embracing. And at the center of it all was an old man and 6 bikers who'd shown everyone what redemption looked like. On Walter's 92nd birthday, they threw a party. 200 people showed up, family, friends, students, volunteers, townspeople, even some Hell's Angels from 3 states away. Duke stood to give a speech, still using his cane but standing strong. A year and a half ago, 6 of us crashed in an old man's barn. We expected cops or shotguns. We got breakfast instead. Walter Bren fed us when he didn't have to, treated us like humans when no one else would, and in doing that, he saved our lives. The crowd was silent. But here's the thing, we saved his life too, because that's how it works. Salvation isn't a one-way street. We save each other, we lift each other, we show up for each other, and together we build something bigger than any of us could build alone. Duke raised his glass. To Walter Bren, the stubbornest, kindest, most impossible man I've ever met. Thank you for teaching us that it's never too late. Never too late to change, to grow, to become who we were meant to be. Everyone drank. Everyone cheered. And Walter, surrounded by his chosen family, felt something he hadn't felt since Martha died. Complete. That night, after everyone left, Walter and Duke sat on the porch watching the sunset. You scared? Duke asked. Of what? Dying, leaving all this behind. Walter thought about it. Not anymore. I used to be terrified. Terrified of dying alone, of being forgotten, of everything I built disappearing. But now, he gestured at the farm, at the lights in the barn, where someone was finishing a late woodworking project, at the garden, where Sarah was walking with her baby at the chicken coop, where Sophie had fallen asleep doing her keeper duties. Now I know it'll go on without me. This place, these people, this community, it'll outlive me, and that's enough. More than enough, Duke agreed. They sat in silence, these two men who'd found each other in the darkest moments of their lives and had somehow created light. Thank you, Walter said, for everything, for fixing my farm, for saving my life, for showing me that family isn't about blood. It's about choice. Thank you for feeding 6 strangers who showed up in your barn, for trusting us when you had no reason to, for teaching us that redemption is possible. Duke's voice was thick with emotion. You gave us a home, Walter, a real home, and that's something none of us thought we'd ever have again. You gave me a reason to live. That's something I'd lost. They watched the sun disappear below the horizon, painting the sky in oranges, in purples and golds. The farm was quiet now, peaceful, full of promise and hope and second chances. Walter Bren was 92 years old. His body was failing. His time was limited, but his legacy was secure. He'd taken 6 Hell's Angels and a broken farm and had created a sanctuary that would help hundreds, maybe thousands of people in the years to come. He'd made breakfast for strangers, and they'd given him back his life. And in the end, that's all any of us can hope for, to touch someone's life, to make a difference, to show up when it matters, and to leave the world a little better than we found it. Walter had done that. They all had. Together, they'd proven that broken people could fix each other, that it's never too late for redemption, and that the smallest acts of kindness could change everything. The farm stood strong against the coming night, a beacon of hope in a dark world built by broken people who'd refused to stay broken, led by an old man who'd learned that giving up was never the answer, and 6 bikers who discovered that sometimes the greatest strength comes from accepting help instead of always giving it.